Hey guys, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my guide for Turn 5 of the Binding Coil of Bahamut, the final encounter in patch 2.0 of A Realm Reborn. For the sake of this guide, we will first discuss each individual phase and how to deal with each mechanic. At the end of the video, I will include the kill video with my commentary over it, discussing how my group specifically handled each phase of the encounter. This encounter consists of 5 total phases, each greatly varying from the ones before it. To master this encounter, you must learn to play your jobs at the maximum level of effectiveness, making use of every tool imaginable to squeeze out as much damage mitigation, healing dealt, and damage dealt as you can. Your movements and reactions must also be at their peaks for all 8 players. So first, let us break down the encounter. During Phase 1, you will have to deal with a total of 4 enemies. 3 of them are the Scourge of Mericidia, and the final is Twintania, who is the actual boss for the encounter. The first aspect you must conquer for this encounter is the pull, as any sort of mistake on the pull can quickly lead to an instant death, wipe, and reset of the boss. You will generally want one tank to hold the 3 Scourges while the other tank holds Twintania away from the raid. To handle this properly, the Scourge tank should run in first and generate AoE threat. Once all 3 Scourges reach his location, since they are sort of spread out, you do have to wait for them to converge on your location. A good rotation in this situation is to do Flash, then Circle of Scorn, and Flash if you're using a Paladin, that is. While this is happening, the other tank will single target threat to Twintania and ensure she is facing away from everyone else. Once each tank is in position, your first goal is to deal with the 3 Scourges. Each one has a moderate amount of HP and will likely take about 15 to 20 seconds to kill. They also have a basic auto attack which deals minimal damage. However, their big move that they cast is called Liquid Hell, which cannot be stunned or silenced. This move will pick a random raid member and spit a fireball at them. It will deal moderate damage on impact and leave a fire zone on the ground, which will deal about 1500 damage over time every few seconds. The target that Liquid Hell selects can be the off tank or the tank on Twintania, so be prepared to move quickly to avoid taking the extra damage. As you kill each Scourge, you will have less Liquid Hells to avoid, and when they are all dead, you are done dealing with the mechanic for now. There are 2 special notes about Liquid Hell. The first is that, before it finishes casting, there is no indication of who it will target, meaning it might be coming for you and you will have no idea, making it hard to move out preemptively. Another thing to note is that, despite what I just said, Liquid Hell can be dodged if you're always on the move. When Liquid Hell locks onto a target, it will also lock onto that target's current location when the spell starts. So when the cast is finished, it will land wherever the target was located when the cast began. So this means if, by coincidence, you start moving after Liquid Hell is casting on you, you can usually escape its effect entirely, if not partially. During all of this, you're still dealing with Twintania, however, though she only has a couple of moves at this point other than her basic attack. On top of her basic attacks, she will occasionally plummet, which is basically her cleave move. It's a conal move that does several thousand damage to anyone in front of her. Additionally, she has her signature move called Death Sentence. This is a single hitting ability that cannot be escaped once it starts casting on you. No matter how far you move, or even if someone provokes off of you, it will still hunt down Twintania's target when she starts casting it. In Phase 1, Death Sentence deals roughly 4 to 6k damage, depending on blocking, parrying, or cooldowns. Rotating defensive cooldowns can help deal with this when you are first learning a fight, but eventually you will learn to save most of them for Phases 2 through 5, rotating them regularly there. Oh, and by the way, the side of the arena is made of fire and will kill you instantly if you walk into it. So keep that in mind if you're trying to tank Twintania close to the wall. Just make sure your tanks aren't too close to the wall. Twintania will continue to use both Plummet and Death Sentence throughout the rest of the fight at all times except for Phase 3. So dealing with Phase 1 is a matter of having a proper pull, killing the Scourges as soon as possible while healing through Liquid Hell and Death Sentence. Keep in mind, like I said, your main tank can be targeted with Liquid Hell, so your main tank has to be ready to rotate a certain amount just to avoid the fire on the ground. It would be really bad if he got hit with a Liquid Hell, a Death Sentence, a Plummet, and an auto attack all within a few seconds. Doesn't matter how good you are, that can usually result in death if you're just learning the fight for the first time. Once all 3 Scourges are dead, Twintania will continue to use Death Sentence and Plummet until 85%, when she will transition into the next phase. This transition will be noted by the dropping of a Neuralink on the ground. This puddle will provide the debuff titled Neuralink on anyone who steps inside, greatly decreasing their damage and healing dealt while inside. You won't interact with these Neuralinks at all until Phase 3, so don't worry about them too much for now, though we will discuss them in depth later on. Phase 2 will begin to test your group's DPS and healing. Twintania will continue to use Death Sentence and Plummet. However, Death Sentence will now also apply a debuff on its target called Infirmity, which reduces their healing received through spells by a significant amount. Please keep in mind that the warrior's self-heal, such as Inner Beast and Thrill of Battle, will be unaffected by Affirmity. This ability itself will also start to deal significantly higher damage, about 7.5 to 8k before mitigations, so it usually requires a defensive cooldown to survive. Stone Skin and Eloquium help tremendously. Twintania will also begin to cast 2 new spells, Fireball and Conflagration. Both of these moves cannot target the top 2 highest enemy targets, which is likely both your main tank and your off tank. When the phase begins, the first of these 2 abilities you will see is Fireball, and it will be designated by a red and black mark above somebody's head. After 4 seconds, Twintania will spit a Fireball at that target, dealing 13k damage to that target. Should anyone be around the fireballed target, the damage will be split between however many players were hit, which is the intended way of dealing with the mechanic. For example, if 3 players are hit by the damage, then it will be 13k divided by 3 per player, so approximately 4.3k per person hit. The damage from this ability can be reduced through means such as Sacred Soil, Succor, Rain of Death, and Stone Skin. And keep in mind that the damage split is not always entirely even, since it does take your defenses into account. For that reason, using Summoner and Scholar Pets is extremely effective because they will only take 200 or 300 damage from the AoE effect of the Fireball. The player with the mark can also parry and block the attack. So if you have something such as Keen Flurry, you can occasionally reduce the damage from it in such a case. And if the player hit by the mark or the explosion can have their casting interrupted. So Surecast is a great tool here. For each player hit by Fireball, Twintania will gain a stack of Waxen Flesh. This debuff will affect Twintania's other ability during this phase, Conflagration. Conflagration will be noted above a player's head as a blue and black mark. After 4 seconds, the marked player will be rendered unable to move or act, and will be encased in a conflagration, similar to Titan's Jail. While inside the conflagration, that player will burn for 300-ish magic damage every 3 seconds. Should the player die while inside, or should a specific amount of time pass before it is killed, any players inside the conflagration will explode for close to 9,000 damage. It'll instantly kill everyone inside, basically. Now, Waxen Flesh affects Conflagration by determining how long you will have to kill it before it explodes. The more stacks of Waxen Flesh Twintania has when she casts Conflagration, the less time you will have to kill it. For this reason, you want to be controlling how many people get hit by Fireball very carefully, and ensuring to heal them up quickly afterwards. For reference, 3 stacks of Waxen Flesh will provide the group with 15 seconds to kill the Conflagration. Additionally, you can artificially extend Conflagration's duration by having a player marked with Fireball step into it. They will become immobile as well, however this will reset Waxen Flesh's stacks and give you an extremely long time to DPS down the Conflagration. It also means you won't need to split the damage for that Fireball. Mind you though, this won't always be possible to do, as some blue marks will come at times when red marks cannot be given to them without carefully controlling the timers. Some additional notes about Conflagration: should the Conflagration explode and you are too close to it, which you can usually notice if you see that you're taking fire damage over time but you're not actually in the Conflagration and unable to move and all that, you will die. You will die simply for being in its effect. The actual immobilization effect is only in the very center. Also, in order to properly feed the red mark to the Conflagration, you need to run into that very center of it before Twintania casts Fireball. Now, there are a number of ways to deal with this phase. Death Sentence can be handled in one of 2 ways right off the bat. Either you can tank swap every single one, which will give you plenty of time to heal up the tank that just got hit by Death Sentence, or you can have a tank enter a Conflagration, assuming it's sitting directly under a boss. This will actually allow your tank to avoid taking damage until the Conflagration is killed. However, both of these strategies require vastly different positioning and a bit of practice to get down. For example, feeding the tank Conflagrations requires very careful timing, and should you not have enough DPS to kill a Conflagration, the tank will go down with anybody else inside of it. Tank swapping means that your tanks must be paying attention, but your healers will have plenty of time to heal up the target from Infirmity, so you won't have to worry about healing that single target throughout the rest of the fight. Now, Conflagration should be handled with the utmost care. Should your raid be grouping up and moving when somebody gets a mark, that person needs to react immediately after being chosen. Whether it's a red mark or a blue mark, that person needs to react and be in the proper position immediately. Regardless of that, your raid needs the highest possible DPS to ensure that conflagrations stand no chance at erupting. You'll be handling conflagrations until Phase 3, which will begin at 55% of Twintania's HP. Again, another necklace will break off and form a second Neuralink puddle. During this phase, you will begin to utilize these puzzles, though not until the very end of the phase. Twintania will soar into the air and become untargetable after the necklace breaks. After a few seconds, Twintania will place a crosshair over someone's head and lock onto their current location. After a short delay, Twintania will use Dive Bomb, sweeping in a line across most of the arena in the direction of the locked-on player's location when she started casting it. So similar to Liquid Hells, it will look at your location when she starts casting it, and it will remember that location. Should she make contact with anybody, she will deal several thousand damage and knock them back. Remember earlier when we mentioned the sides of the arena being on fire? Well, this is why. Twintania has 3 locations that she can swoop down from for Dive Bomb, and they're marked in this image right here. I'm going to leave this up on the video for a few seconds. And I think that's good enough. So, after 3 Dive Bombs, 3 enemies will spawn on the west side of the arena. 1 Asclepius and 2 Hygeia. Consider these snakes mini-bosses for this phase of the encounter. Both of these snakes use the standard snake moves from the enemies out in Mordona, so they don't have any cleaves, which is very useful for this phase. They do auto-attack and occasionally use a weapon skill called Wild Rattle, which does additional single target damage. Asclepius has an incredibly high HP pool that, by default, your raid would struggle to get through without the help of this phase's mechanic. The Hygeia snakes, when killed, will do a small range AoE around them called Disseminate. This will place a debuff on all nearby targets, allied and enemy, that increases all the damage dealt to those targets for 40 seconds by 25%. Therefore, killing a Hygeia near the other snakes will cause them to gain 1 stack of Disseminate. The Hygeia have a moderate amount of HP as well though, so this phase is still a major DPS check. 45 seconds after these snakes pop, Twintania will proceed to Dive Bomb the raid 3 more times. However, this time, you have big mean snakes trying to eat your face. For that reason, you must stay calm and collected while dodging the Dive Bombs here. DPS, be very careful about running and DPSing these snakes at the same time. If you have your controls set to turn to face an enemy when you attack, it's likely you're going to turn, run back into a Dive Bomb, and you're going to get hit by it and you're going to die. So be careful about when you're using your attacks. Healers, you really also need to be very, very careful here about your heals. You need to make sure that the tanks are able to survive running away from the snakes and dodging the Dive Bombs at the same time. After these 3 Dive Bombs, 2 more Hygeia will spawn on the east side of the arena, and your raid will now have 60 seconds to kill all remaining snakes before Twintania returns to the battlefield. The best way to do this? Black Mage Limit Break. In our strategy, we DPS Hygeias 1 and 2 down to about 70% HP, kite them with us during the second set of Dive Bombs, then have the Black Mage Limit Break Asclepius plus all 4 Hygeias. This kills the first 2 and applies the stacks to all the other snakes, making killing Hygeias 3 and 4 a quick and easy thing to deal with, and then a 4-stacked Asclepius dies quickly enough. This is obviously not the only way to deal with the snakes in the face, just our preferred method. After 60 seconds have passed, after the second set of Dive Bombs, regardless of the snakes being alive or not, Twintania will return to the field and charge her ultimate move, Ethereal Profusion. This move will deal approximately 8k damage to everyone in the raid. You can reduce this damage, however, by standing in a Neuralink when the damage hits you. You're going to need to do this to survive, as a matter of fact. For this reason, up to this point, you must carefully plan your Neuralink placement, which we will discuss once we finish going over the 4th phase. Don't worry, we'll be getting back to the Neuralinks, guys. Only seconds after Ethereal Profusion, Twintania will continue to use Death Sentence and Plummet. Usually, she'll plummet right away. However, she will also occasionally perform a new attack, Twister. At the start of this cast, Twister will begin charging an invisible landmine beneath 4 random raid members. If the player is standing on the invisible landmine when the cast time finishes, they will be instantly killed and tossed up into the air. If not, it will still place a landmine on the ground, and if you move back into the landmine, it will, as I said, kill you. So it will toss you up into the air. Additionally, that same Twister will explode outward, dealing high damage and knocking back any other player, potentially sending them into the wall. And additionally, again, if any twisters are nearby to an exploding twister, they will chain detonate, which will likely throw everybody back into the edge of the arena. In order to avoid this mechanic, prior to the patch on October 29th, 2013, you needed to move very specifically to avoid it. However, after they address twisters that patch, you need to be merely moving away from the cast time during the cast time, it seems, and never retrace your steps. Out of habit, I still do the motion you see the healer performing in this video, just because it was the way to dodge the move and it's how I learned it. The other mechanic in this phase is the Dread Knight. Approximately every 30 seconds, Twintania will call a Dread Knight down from the sky, landing in the center of the arena. Shortly after, she will select a random target other than the two highest enemy targets, the tank and the off-tank most likely, and cast Unwoven Will on them. This move will stun whoever she targets, and the Dread Knight will begin to run towards that player. If the Dread Knight is not killed before reaching the player, he will drop kick them with a move called Caber Toss, instantly killing them. Should the Dread Knight still persist, Twintania will pick a new target with Unwoven Will, and the Dread Knight will continue to kill until it dies. So it will just keep going from Unwoven Will to Unwoven Will to Unwoven Will until it dies. To deal with the Dread Knight, it is recommended you take the following precautions. 1. Have all your players as far from the center as possible when one comes down. 2. Ensure you have a stun rotation down on the Dread Knight. One paladin can handle this with 3 shield bashes. And 3, applying any slow to the Dread Knight buys you a lot of time. Miasma and Lethargy both stack, greatly reducing its movement speed when not stunned. The toughest part of this phase is when Twintania performs Twister while you are in the process of killing a Dread Knight. This becomes even harder the more melee you have, so your melee are going to have to be spread out in case of a situation like this. This will usually happen every other Twister phase, so every other Dread Knight, I should say. So the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, those Dread Knights usually have Twisters when they are being killed. So just keep that in mind. When this happens, everyone must be sure to have Twintania as their focus target to watch for the cast and dodge in such a way that they won't leave a Twister in anyone else's path, as well as not run into anyone else's. If you are a PS3 player, I recommend the use of a voice program like Mumble and have your raid group shout it out when it's coming out. This takes some practice, but once you're able to safely dodge Twisters, this phase becomes significantly easier, as long as you have the DPS to kill a Dread Knight and the healing to ensure that your tanking Twintania can survive even through Infirmity. At 32%, Twintania's final Neuralink will break off of her body and the final phase of the encounter will begin. Should there be any Dread Knights alive at the time, Twintania will create a tether between her and them. Having never seen its final effect before, all I can tell you is that it can't be good, so kill the Dread Knight as quickly as possible. Anyway, now that all 3 Neuralinks are broken and on the ground, let's go over the recommended layout for them. Basically, you want all 3 Neuralinks to create a triangle, and the final one completing the triangle and where you'll be tanking Twintania for the remainder of the fight. Neuralinks from phases 1 and 2 should make the base of the triangle, with the Neuralink from phase 4 creating the tip. As you can see in this picture, this is the way our group handles the Neuralinks from each phase, though this is by no means the only way to handle the Neuralinks. I'm sure there are plenty of other ways out there to handle them, just our preferred methods. Twintania will still plummet and death sentence in this phase, however she will stop casting Twisters and stop summoning Dread Knights. Instead, Twintania will bring back Liquid Hells from phase 1 and spit them out herself. Every 20 seconds, Twintania will select a random raid member and spit 5 Liquid Hells in succession at the target. While you can dodge the damage over time effect from them, each one will deal about 300 damage to the player she was aiming at. It will take her about 10 seconds to spit out all 5 of these Liquid Hells, and each one will remain on the ground for 30 seconds. So expect the ground to have 5 to 10 of them on it at any given time. Twintania's other move causes her to place an Oviform directly under her behind. For nice words. This Oviform will quickly gain size and simultaneously mark a random target other than the main tank. This mark will take the shape of 3 orbs spiraling around the selected player. After growing to full size, the orb will move extremely quickly towards its intended target. Should the Oviform make contact with the marked player or any target prior, it will hatch, exploding and dealing about 8k damage to whoever it exploded on. It also deals a very small range AoE, so it can kill multiple people if they are too close to one another. Hatch's damage can be severely negated, however, by moving into a Neuralink as the Oviform hits you, bringing it down to about 1500 damage. This is why you want the Neuralinks in the triangle locations. So the easiest way to deal with Oviform and Hatch is to do your best to hold Twintania perfectly still once the phase transitions, allowing the off-tank to soak the Oviform as it comes out. Since she drops the necklace exactly where Oviform will come out, if the off-tank stands in the circle the entire phase, they can force them all to explode on him or her, minimalizing the mechanic. However, this does not always work as simply as said. This is due to Liquid Hell. Should the main tank or the off tank become the target for Liquid Hell, Twintania may need to be repositioned, or the off tank may need to move out of the Neuralink, which can throw off the strategy by having the off tank soak the Oviforms. This is why the rest of your raid should be loosely spread out around the other Neuralinks for phases 1 and 2. Should a situation occur where the off-tank can't soak the hatch damage, players need to be mindful to try and run into the Neuralink to soak the damage themselves. Melee, be mindful of who is standing behind you and where. Since Oviform will hatch upon contact, if you are between the Oviform and its target, it will hatch on you and instantly kill you. Remember that. Oviforms travel and explode on the first target they hit. So if you are standing between the target and the Oviform, you will die. Pretty much. For main tanks, don't panic if you get Liquid Hell. You can eat 2 or 3 of them before the damage becomes too high, at which point you can Hollowed Ground or Thrill of Battle plus Inner Beast to continue to stand still until all 5 land. After all 5 are stacked below you, move 90 degrees around so that Oviforms still hatch out in the same spot. Should it happen again in the same fight, expect your raid to begin to dodge their own Oviforms. Now, should the off-tank be the target, his Neuralink will be covered for 30 seconds, so Melee and the off-tank should be mindful of this and stand in such a spot they can move into one of the other 2 Neuralinks should they be the target. If you can handle the high tank damage, the randomness of who gets selected for Liquid Hell, and properly react to Oviform and Hatch, then congratulations, you are well on your way to clearing Turn 5 of the Binding Coil of Bahamut. I am going to attach a video at the end of this to discuss the various tactics we use to overcome each mechanic specifically. Thank you for watching this. Hope this was a big help, and enjoy. So I don't actually have a very good recording of the fight itself, so I'm going to be doing this from a healer's perspective, our healer's perspective. So let's get right into it anyway, though. As you can see, we had the tank for the Scourges run over into the corner over there. We marked a Scourge 1, 2, and 3. So he did the rotation, he did Flash, Circle of Scorn, and then Flash again. He ran them over into that corner over there, while our main tank brings Twintania over into this location for phase 1. Now, like I said, any real location works as long as the end result has some Neuralinks that people can use themselves to dodge mechanics, and you're able to properly handle Oviform. But by no means is this the only way to tank Twintania. You can tank her in pretty much any location as long as the end result is a triangle of Neuralinks. So the DPS are quickly killing the Scourges while the main tank does his best to dodge these Liquid Hells. He only got 1 during this phase, but it's entirely possible that your main tank could get 3 right off the start. So you really have to be reacting quick to these Liquid Hells. Also, the tank, as you can see, does take quite a bit of death sentence damage, but he really only uses cooldowns like Foresight and Convalescence, not really big cooldowns like Rampart or Sentinel during this phase. Other than that, he's just doing what he normally does. So we killed all 3 of them, and at this point, phase 1 just becomes a prepare for phase 2 phase. All you're doing is dealing with plummets and death sentence and just waiting for 85% so that you can actually work on the second phase here. So unfortunately, like I said, there's not really much to talk about here. You're going to notice our locations are kind of spread out a little bit, and we really don't have... there really wasn't a need to be carefully, tightly knit during this phase. Although some groups may find it better to be grouped up on Twintania's behind. Around where our monk is, you'll usually have one person soaking a red mark with a fairy pet or something like that, and you'll have everybody else on the other side, just so it's calm and controlled, and you know everybody has to move, but at least everybody knows their own responsibilities, and you can clearly see when somebody messes up or when somebody gets a mark. So we're now into phase 2, so our Scholar lays down Sacred Soil and Succor, and there's a red mark. I also put Rain of Death on Twintania, and I run in. So it's me, the Scholar, and the Scholar's pet that were splitting the damage for that red mark, the Fireball. And with all that damage mitigation, it really doesn't deal that much. It still deals a few thousand and can still kill you, but it's not as bad as it could be. So we always use the Scholar and their own pet to soak, although, that, again, that's not the only way. So I just received a blue mark, and there's the conflagration, so people are quickly jumping on it. Somebody gets a red mark and runs it in, and now we have plenty of time to kill this. Ignore the black mage that just got plummeted over there. He lived, so I guess it doesn't really matter since we end up winning in the end. Anyway, healer moves over here, and we are all getting into a loosely spread out position behind the Scholar and their pet. There were double DPS in the conflag, so it usually takes a little bit longer to kill if you get 2 DPS. So a red mark is going to be coming out next, so the healer puts a Sacred Soil in such a location that it hits the tanks and the healer that is going to be soaking the damage. So that one did quite a bit. Now this is the big part. After that red mark, a blue mark will come out if you're doing the double tank strategy. So This blue mark will not have a red mark defeat to it. You're going to have to use DPS cooldowns to kill this blue mark, at least if you use our preferred method. So we kill it really quick, and then a red mark comes out. So just in case that healing is a little bit too tightly, we actually stack 4 people for this red mark. There's no reason to really take the extra damage of a 3 mark when we're going to be feeding the next blue mark a red mark anyway, so we'll have plenty of time to kill it regardless. So just to reduce some healing strain, we stack 4 people after that conflagration, and we just repeat this for the remainder of the phase. Every time Twintania switches, it's pretty much because of infirmity. Also, when Twintania is not death sentencing, the off tank runs over and helps DPS the conflagration. This helps quite a bit. I mean, it's not massive, but it does help. You know, a Rage of Helon and a Circle of Scorn can make the difference. Your off tank just needs to be making sure that they're aware of when Twintania is death sentencing so they don't miss it and miss a provoke. Again, if you're using this strategy. It does help if you have double paladins. If you have stone skin on your bar, you can stone skin yourself if you time it properly. In case your healer might be busy healing somebody else, it does help occasionally. So we just keep repeating this, being loosely on the outside. We're going to get another blue mark here, and this is another blue mark that we need to DPS down. So here we go, blue mark. We have to use proper cooldowns to DPS it down. As you can see, everybody just switches to it immediately, and that needs to happen. People can't do an extra attack or 2 on Twintania. You need to focus all your efforts onto a conflagration. So there's our red mark. We're going to do another 4 stack here, and then Twintania is going to go into phase 3. Now, this part we deal with our very own specific way. Most other groups deal with it a different way, and the other way of dealing with it relies more on individual skill, whereas this is group coordination. So feel free to use whichever method works for you. So we all stack on me. We call out a huddle, we time it, and then we run. So we're running when the crosshair comes out. So we are already well ahead of dive bomb by the time it comes out. So then we do the same thing and we do it 3 times. Now we specifically go from the middle to south to the middle back to south again. But this, again, not nearly the only way to do it. Most other groups will hug about where the snakes come out, right over in that corner. And they will hide in the little dip behind them, and then they'll move up whenever somebody gets marked. This makes it so you're really close to the snakes. It makes dive bombs really easy to deal with because you don't really have to move that far, and you're always in the same location. You just have to make sure everyone's paying attention and that they move as soon as a mark comes out. That's really the only thing. So after that, we pull the snakes and we start AoEing them right about here. So where I'm standing, where me, this healer that's doing the point of view, and the scholar, where we're standing, we're actually going to huddle very soon. We actually have a timer that we're keeping track of, and we're going to huddle and run like we just did in the previous phase. Apparently, I decided we were going to move over there, so I don't know, that's just what we're doing. So we have the 2 little snakes down to about 60% HP, just from AoEs and dots, really. And the big snake is down to about 70% of his HP. So we're trying as best as we can to DPS and run. We also have 2 black mages off on the side with Mana Wall. Mana Wall will prevent the knockback from dive bomb, so you can place your black mages off to the side, and they can draw dive bombs. As you can see, he got dive bombed right there, took no damage whatsoever. It was really easy and it was just really helpful and really easy to deal with. So he does that also so he can immediately start casting Meteor from that location without having to move into the range of it first. So this kills the first 2 snakes, Hygeia's 1 and 2. We quickly burst down Hygeia's 3 and 4, and with 2 stacks and 2 black mages, it goes extremely quickly. Then we pop as many cooldowns as we can. We don't pop potions here, though, and we kill Asclepius. Now, you may need to pop potions or use higher quality food if you're having trouble meeting the DPS requirements for this. Again, there are quicker ways to do this phase. This was just the way that we learned it before the fight was, before Twisters got nerfed and during our original endeavors with the fight. So it's the strategy that we are sticking to for this video. So we're killing the Asclepius, and as soon as the Asclepius dies, we'll have a few seconds to get into position for the next phase. So Asclepius is dead, and Twintania's going to be coming down in a few seconds. I sing Ballad over there just to give the healers a little bit of strength, relief. And we also stand outside the circle and apply dots and any damage that we can before moving into the Neuralink. Things like Sacred Soil, Succor, Rain of Death, they all help reduce the damage right here. So as soon as that happens, she's going to do Twisters right away. So make sure you have her focus targeted. There she goes, Twister. So we move in that funny little circle right there. That was a strategy back in, before it got nerfed, but you really don't need to do that anymore. Just out of habit, it's a nice, safe thing to do, just to make sure you always have it in practice. So the Dread Knight spawned in the center, and pretty much we're just blowing it up. We have 3 ranged and 1 melee. As soon as the melee sees that he wasn't picked for Unwoven Will, he gets in there and he just destroys it, along with the off tank, who, by the way, does not provoke Twintania at all during this phase. we have a single tank on Twintanya for the entirety of the phase. This just makes it easier for you to not have to constantly position switch and, you know, take the chance that there might be a bad plummet. Anyway, incoming is a Dread Knight plus a Twister. Now, this is, even though Twisters has been made a little bit easier to dodge, and by a little bit I mean a lot, this is still a phase that people have to pay attention to, because if you don't have Twintanya focused, you can easily miss this Twister right here. So here it comes, we're killing it, we dodge it, and everyone's okay. Now, as you can see, the Monk did get a Twister, as did the tank who was on the Dread Knight. So if you have even more melee, you really have to make sure that you're spread out loosely around that Dread Knight. The Dragoon really works well with you know, Life Surge or whatever it is, the one that gives them the automatic crit and their 300, their hard-hitting abilities. It makes it really easy so that they can stand in any location, heavy thrust, and then get wherever you need to go. So here, the tank is really just single rotating cooldowns. He still has to dodge his own Twisters, as you can see. The main tank has to dodge his own Twisters the entire time. Your healers really have to be up on this fight in order for you to heal through Infirmity, because it's pretty significant, the healing that it reduces. And that's why having a Scholar and a White Mage comes really in handy here. Really like Stone Skin, you'll really like Adloquium. It just all comes in major handy. So as long as you can keep dodging these Twisters, keep killing the Dread Knights, and as long as you know when everything's coming, the phase itself really doesn't feel that much harder than the previous phases. The Dread Knight is still a tight DPS requirement, and you still have to definitely pay attention when Twisters are coming out. But the phase itself has been made significantly easier. So if you can get this phase down, I have no doubt that you can definitely handle the next phase and defeat Twintanya. I have utmost faith, if you're watching this and you can get past this phase, that you can definitely deal with the last phase, which is going to happen right now. So we had the little tether spawn, and now the off tank is moving into the overform area. So as you can see, you're going to see that we start to move into a location that's a little bit better for us. So Liquid Hells are coming out. You can't really see them right here, but they're spawning behind the Black Mage is all the way back there. So he brought them back there. Now you can see, just barely see the overforms coming out, but you'll be able to see them later in the phase when we get some bad Liquid Hells. So now we have the Liquid Hells. They're going out over onto me. I'm over in the corner. It's actually going to come onto me again. Even though you might try to move out and dodge the initial damage, you're going to get hit pretty much by every single Liquid Hell. Now, we lost a tank right here, so if that happens, don't panic. It's actually good to bring one melee into this fight just in case that happens, because your off tank can provoke Twintanya and start becoming the main tank again, and one of your melee can actually soak the overform in place of what the off tank was doing. So it's actually not bad for anybody to do. A melee can do it. The only difference is, because Neuralink reduces your damage by half, that melee will do significantly reduced damage, and because of the enrage timer on this fight being 13 minutes, that's never a good thing for anybody. So this is really where things start to get a little bit out of hand, where we get some really bad Liquid Hell luck. So our melee is standing off to the side, so in case he gets it, it doesn't, you know, cover the Neuralink. So a healer gets it. When a healer gets it, your other healer really needs to be careful here, because this healer will probably be unable to do much until all 5 Liquid Hells come out. So as you can see, a Death Sentence is coming out right here. It still hurts. It still hurts pretty bad. I think he blocked it or dodged it or something right there, but it still hurts pretty bad. So now this is where the off tank gets a Liquid Hell, and this is where you really need to begin to improvise with this stage. Our Monk actually backs off entirely, and the overform travels all the way to him. So as you can see, the AoE for the overform is extremely small. But people are now dodging their own overforms, and that's what it looks like when you dodge your own overform. It'll travel out to you, hit you, and if you're not standing in a Neuralink, you will die. Now, I think somebody else gets hit by it sometime soon, somebody outside the Neuralink, and you'll also see a situation where where it'll explode midway onto its traveling to you. It travels off to the Black Mage, who's off in the corner, just because there wasn't really a lot of room because of the Liquid Hells. So he was standing off in the corner, and he died. Now, this next one, the Monk decides he wants to be a champion, takes it to the face. I mean, realistically, it looked like the off tank was going to be able to absorb it, but he was off by just a smidgen. And as long as you can handle this, you should be okay, and you should have a kill on your hands. The last phase isn't really that hard, and once you master Twisters, you should be okay with here. You just really have to be able to improv should you get any sort of Liquid Hells or overforms that don't really meet your actual strategy. There is a bit of RNG involved here. So don't worry, I have the utmost confidence that you guys will be able to beat it. Again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy XIV information and videos. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter for regular updates about videos I'm releasing, when I'm streaming, and things like that. Speaking of streaming, I stream on Sundays and Wednesdays from noon to 5:30. That's my usual schedule. It does vary from time to time, but it's a schedule that I'm trying to stick to. My Twitch is in the description below. Head over there and follow me if you want to come over and have some fun. I am doing the Extra Life charity event for the entire month of November, so come by. We've already hit 2,500. Let's try and go even higher with this one. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, take care.